Hano hano Hawaii I moku o ke awe wehi wehi maui o kama. Mahala malama ka ho'ola we wena wena lana I o ka ulu. Luhi e humolo ka inu I ahina nani o ahu o ka kuhi he wai. Wale a kaua I o mano noe oni I heu o ka helelani. Hele o velina no he ia aloha e. Aloha kākou. Welcome to our program today, Leina Honua Pi'ilani, and our Mele Hulia mahi. We'd like to thank our sponsors, Kanai o Kana, along with Kahuli Leo Le'a, and all of the community groups and families of Maui that we're going to celebrate today. We have our theme today, Mele Hulia mahi, and to explain a little bit more about that, we're going to toss it to our good friend over on Oahu, Mr. Zachary Alakai Lum.
Mahalo Pueo and Lance, and mahalo Yakako Pau for being a part of this particular Hulia Mahi through Mele. With the support of North Beach West Maui Benefit Fund, HK West Maui Benefit Fund, and production partners Kahuli Leo Le'a and Kanai Kana, we're grateful for the opportunity to bring another episode of Mele Hulia Mahi. Hulia Mahi means to act in unison and in great numbers. As we Hulia Mahi, we gather, we organize, we cooperate toward a unified goal. Ultimately, this goal is aloha aina, that is, to actively restore and maintain the balance between environment and kanaka. Our expressions of aloha aina are many. One of its oldest expressions is mele, the vocalization of expertly crafted words and intentions. Hakumele, those who compose mele, document aina. They document the experiences of places and people and weave it into the collective understandings established through generations of mele. As we sing these mele, they become acts of aloha aina. They become reminders of our role as kanaka in aina. Mele is a unique ancestral technology that allows us to tap into our environment, into our people, and bring about hulia mahi. Over the past century, the island of Maui has seen its fair share of hulihia, from reclaiming sugarlands to shoreline access, from sewage pollution to water diversion. And as an awareness for aloha aina rose in the past few decades, community groups, families, and individuals came together ua hulia mahi lako to stand for the rights of aina and the kanaka who continue to live by its values. These are their stories, captured and recalled at the tip of the tongue through these Mele Hulia mahi. We invite you to enjoy these mele and the proud Maui artists performing them today. Whether we're aware of it or not, enjoying these mele is the first and possibly the easiest step toward learning more about these stories. These are your stories, e ko Maui, and what a great way to learn them. Mahalo Pueo and Lance, back to you folks on Maui.
Mahalo nui e Zach. So all of us participating today, we are actually in the act of hulia mahi. No laila, e hulia mahi kākou, no kapono ka aina. Let's all come together for the rights of our lands. This particular project that we're doing now is in celebration of what we're calling Leina Honua Pi'ilani na Mele Hou. Now this release is the second release. I have it right here. The first album are basically songs that you can find in this book, Leina Honua Pi'ilani. And the first release is traditional mele. The second album, that's going to be available exclusively through mele.com. These are mele hou. These are songs that we've recently composed in honor of the theme today, of course, hulia mahi. And mele, of course, are unique for their ability to hold so much information in so few words. It's a very succinct way to transmit knowledge and information. These mele, in particular, tell today's stories of aloha aina, and thus the liner notes found in here are very important to have. You can, of course, buy the puke that has pretty much just the lyrics. But ai no maloko ke ia wahine within here, you'll find the liner notes, along with the type of information that's important for the background meanings of these mele. It's very, very beautiful production that we've been able to put together. So make sure you get your copy of the liner notes and buy this CD. These are resources that belong with the rest of your library. So pick up yours, mele.com. Also, CD 1 and 2 and the songbook can also be found at Kamehameha Publishing, and they're the distributors for this project. The proceeds that this album and the bouquet will bring in are going to benefit West Maui's Hawaiian language immersion program called Naleo Kalele. And even though this program is pre-recorded for your enjoyment, Lance and I, we are actually watching live with you right now. So feel free once again to chat with us. Mahalo to the many organizations that are cross-posting our program tonight. We encourage you, we ask you, we implore you to please share this stream so that these mele and the mo'olelo behind them are heard, that they're known, and that they can be celebrated. Again, you can buy this pasede. The liner notes will have information in there. The bouquet has all the lyrics and the notation. But you can also go to waihona.net, waihona.net, because the mele and the mana'o for these mele, they're all available for download there. So I guess we can just get started, because I'd love to introduce a lot of these mele that we're going to do today. The first mele is kind of making me nervous right now, because it's one that I composed. This is called Namamo a Waiuli. I believe that the olelo, the wehewehe for this was written by my co-host here, Mr. Lance Collins. Would you like to read it, or would you like?
No, go ahead.
Okay, I'll do it. So wai, or water, is an integral part of aina, and it denotes wai, or wealth and life. This mele, Namamua Waiuli, it's a mele aloha aina that houses characteristics of honokohau, including waiuli. Waiuli is the famed ancient burial pit for the people of that area. And just like the course of the waters from Pu'ueke above down to Pu'uka'eo, I weave in the pride of the Po'emahi Aikalo in Honokohau, their ancestors and their fight to return water and thus life to Honokohau. And the second mele that we're going to present is called Kanania Opalawei. It was composed by Anela Evans. Kanani A'opalawe encapsulates cultural resources, practices, and the mo'olelo of Lanai that continue to guide the people of that beautiful island. Native Hawaiian traditional and customary rights in Hawaii are constitutionally protected. In an effort to protect their aina and these practices, the kupa of Lanai intervened in the Lanai Planning Commission proceeding regarding a proposed airstrip. Referencing mo'olelo, woven into this mele, the hakumele, Anela, reminds us that some things are not as we perceive them to be, that we should not act in haste. Rather, we should do our homework before making decisions. At this time, we'd like to introduce the first two mele of our program today. Mahalo. I never get used to hearing my own voice. But that was me performing along with Kiau Ho with Jeff Ohoy, and my good friend Mark Palakiko. Mark, his family comes also from Honokohau, so it was very important that I include him and the ohana of that area in our presentation for Na Mamua Waiuli. Both songs actually talk about water sources and the way that people access those resources. But let's talk first about Na Mamua Waiuli. Lance, can you talk to us about the mahi ai kalo and what they're dealing with over there presently?
So, Honokohau was a place where lots of taro was grown, and it is today also a place where kalo is grown. And the folks there are trying to reestablish or to change what are right now the interim in-stream flow standards. And what's very difficult is that, of course, there's a large landowner who's constantly going through major leadership changes practically every quarter. And so for them, they just want the water in the stream so that they can expand the amount of kalo that's being produced. And the Commission on Water Resource Management has gone through all of the watersheds and is now in West Maui and is now at Honokohau. And so it looks like there might be a more lasting change on the horizon soon for them.
Yeah. It's such a special place. You know, as soon as you kind of pass Honolulu and you head down towards Honokohau, you see those beautiful red cliffs. They're very majestic, kind of intimidating, but that also to me reflects the spirit of the people. They're so proud, they're so strong, and that valley deserves the best. So our hearts go out to them. The Mele, of course, is in honor of them. And please never, ever give up. And as far as the Kanania o Palawai is concerned, it mentions, the lyrics mention all different types of water sources. And of course, up there, just from the Mele, I'm kind of collecting the mana'o that mist in the forms of uhiwai, the noi, and the type of chill that's alluded to with the word liho. Those are the sources of water up there that probably sustain life there now, but through active management could probably sustain a lot more, just as it did in the old days. But in regards to a Lanai case, Lance, I heard they're trying again. Can you explain about that?
Sure. So it's in respect to the airstrip, we've heard word that now these big companies from Japan and elsewhere are trying to, again, try to establish an airstrip, which of course airports are not permitted in the agricultural district. But the other thing about that, you were talking about the water sources, and I think another interesting tidbit that folks may not know is that the Haku Mele, actually her family was part of Lanai for Sensible Growth, and the Hawaii Supreme Court just a few weeks ago issued a decision basically saying that the Land Use Commission cannot change the definition of what domestic water is, potable water, for purposes that satisfy the large landowner on Lanai. So it's an interesting thing that although the song was written about this most recent activity going on with respect to this proposed airstrip, in fact, it also calls back to these other issues that are previous and also springing forth again.
Yeah, well, congratulations to them on that. The resources of water, the resources of that land, especially on Lanai, they're so limited. It's a finite a resource for them. So hopefully through things like Mele, when we put these intentions upon our voices and on our breath, that will allow more water to proliferate and the people to come up, to rise up as well. We'd also like to say that last Mele will actually be found on the next release. So that was kind of a preview for you. The next release, Na Mele Hulia Mahi. You'll have to keep an eye out for that, and we'll be talking more about that probably next month. We'd like to go ahead and move on to the next two songs. And goodness gracious, another one of my compositions, Haloa Kawaio Kahoma. Left dry only once before. The area of Kahoma the rivers of Kahoma were actually stopped as an act of war during Kamehameha Nui's lifetime. Can you imagine that? To divert water from a river was considered an act of war. And this took place in the latter part of the 1700s, or mid to late 1700s. And so by the time sugar interests came in, the kupuna could definitely recall things that their parents and their kupuna said to them about those times, the same way that we are right now about the Spanish flu. It wasn't that long ago. So an act of war diverted the waters of Kahoma. Now we also know that Kahoma Stream was one of many streams that has been impacted by sugar water diversions. Haloa Kawaio Kahoma's celebratory tone, however, I use it to reframe this narrative, to praise the work of Kekai Keahi and the hui called Kamalu o Kahalawei in restoring Kanaha and the Lo'i of Kahoma Valley. They're doing an excellent job. Okay, we'll talk more about that after the mele is finished. The next song after that was written by my friend Kumuhula Iliahi Paredes, and it's called Hano Hano Mele Pai. Now the Haku Mele, Kumu Iliahi, dedicates this mele to the Ohana Casco in honor of their family ties to and aloha for Mele Pai. Through the eyes of these beloved kama'aina, Hano Hano Mele Pai encapsulates the nohona of this small fishing village. We'd like now to present to you these two mele, Haloa Kawaio Kahoma and Hano Hano Mele Pai.
Mahi kana ke akuri no ka ohala ka nohi kau maka o e kai ono Huka ono o ka limu o ia ka hala e behi kamaha ono ke ae one Ua bili he aloha I ka le a ala Melia kalu he a kau I ka poli Haina ka puhana hai no he iala Hano hano mai le bai I ka la mali e Haina ka puhana hai no he iala Hano hano mai le bai I ka la mali e Hano hano mai le bai I ka la mali e
The mele for kahoma. We were so overjoyed when Maukatumakai flow was finally restored. But I've seen several videos now about the o'opu in the stream. So can you tell me a little bit more about what's going on with that?
Well, there's a couple of stories. The first one is after the flow was restored full time, of course the o'opu magically reappeared, as they always do. And of course, as soon as they reappeared in numbers, then some individuals started going down there and harvesting them as though they all had to be taken, including the pregnant ones. And so that was a problem that the community is trying to fix. Unfortunately, there's not exactly any rules or laws that directly manage that. And so I know the community is working on that. And then the other problem that has also occurred is that there's been a few times where the stream has gone completely dry because one of the persons that have control over the diversions up above had, for whatever reason, completely stopped the flow. And that unfortunately has also affected the o'opu, because if there's no water, then they all die. And so the community has worked to try to restore the o'opu population with respect to these different ways where they're being affected.
Yeah, and I've heard some people say, oh, well, we see there's little puddles, remaining even in the diversion area, but that water can reach over 100 degrees, and nothing will survive as far as o'opu and o'pai are concerned, especially in those types of temperatures.
That's right. Try being in a hot tub for 6 hours and see how it feels.
And then another thing that happens when the auku'u and the cattle egrets then have these little baskets of food that they can just take everything in there. So stopping the water, even for a small amount of time, is detrimental to the health of the stream. And I've been fortunate to do some work with the Kalana of Lahaina, and something that you see in there is when these ili are mentioned, it'll also tell you what fisheries they're connected to in certain instances. And a lot of them have to do with o'opu fisheries. So part of colonization is to kind of dispossess a people of their traditions and get them dependent upon the colonizer's resources. And so I can probably say that 95% of people in Hawaii or our watchers have not eaten o'opu. But if you have Hawaiian kupuna, 100% of our kupuna ate o'opu. It was such an important resource that the kahawai and the fisheries at the Muliwai were very well managed and maintained and protected. So bringing o'opu back will allow us Maukatumakai flow, but also allow us to return to heritage foods or legacy foods that we should be using to kind of feed our DNA today. Now, the next mele was for Mele Pai. Many people think of Mele Pai as the uplands of Alailoa, but where exactly is Mele Pai?
So Mele Pai is, I think for most people who drive cars or ride bicycle or walk, it is a very small ahupua'a that is between Kahananui and Alailoa. And it happened to, Mele Pai happened to take on the name of a much larger land case in the 1920s and 30s, the Mele Pai Hui partition. And so most people are probably familiar with that in West Maui, not with Mele Pai, but with the names of roads being Hui Road A, Hui Road F, et cetera, et cetera. And so, yeah, Mele Pai is actually a very small ahupua'a, and most people associate it with the uplands of Alailoa. But its name and its position is actually really well known with respect to land issues in that part of the district.
And hula practitioners should know, especially on Maui, a little bit about Mele Pai, because it's where the home of Auntie Emma Sharp was found. And I was able to go to that home to visit Auntie Edna Beckert to talk about mele. And she had so much information about that place. And it's like a little pu'uhonua. Their home was like a pu'uhonua, along with the Casco Ohana's area, where you have local families amongst all of these newcomers, I should say. Right. And in that area, you mentioned Kahananui. So just before you round the bend, heading into what's now Kapalua, that's where Papa Kalua, the kahuna, he was a kahuna haha, kahuna la'au lapa'au, was right there. So you have these little pu'uhonua that we've been trying to protect. And it's through mele like this that we can be able to bring these names back and these issues back, and hopefully they become places for us to use and to frequent once again. Mahalo anui, mahalo mahalo. So once again, we'd like to remind you to visit mele.com and pick up Leina Honua Pi'ilani na Mele Hou, telling you can get the lyrics through the puke, but you get the background mo'olelo and mana'o in the liner notes. It's a beautiful project that we're going to send the proceeds to our West Maui Hawaiian Language Immersion Program, Na Leo Kalele. We'd like to introduce the 5th and the 6th song of our program today. Staying there on West Maui, we have Ha'aheo Ohono Kauai. My goodness, pretty much this whole program consists of my mele. Thank you for that.
Surprise.
Surprise. I'm just reading this now. So this song, Ha'aheo Ohono Kauai, was written in celebration of Ed Lindsay and the grassroots approach of Maui cultural lands at Hono Kauai. They, along with their work, remind us of our collective values, practices, and worldviews that sustain us as Kanaka. The song after that will be He Mele Ke'ia no Ele Iyo, recounting the famed speedster Ele Iyo, the Kukini. He Mele Ke'ia no Ele Iyo narrates his eventful journey at the request of his chief Kaka'alaneo of Keka'a. Now, in search of Aba from Waiohue, Ele Iyo adventures to the Ko'olau side of Maui, and he encounters the beautiful Kanikani A'ula. And finally, he returns with the Aba for his chief.
ia ke ola I ka lalau Ai nā kua ku pahapo aku E malama ke kahi I mohala mau mai na puanani o nā ina Ke aliku pono no ka ina E koa ke kanaka o ke opureu Mai ka ole o ke akamai Ala nui hele inga e nā makua Ai a ke ola I ka lalau Ai nā kua ku pahapo aku E malama ke kahi I mohala mau mai na puanani o ka aina I mohala mau mai na puanani o ka aina He mele ke ia no ele I o Ke kukini kaulana kala me o He mele ke ia no ele I o Ke kukini kaulana kala me o Viki iuka ikai mai uku me hame I kalaya papai Piku hivi ke amalolo ka vaineu kani kani aula Piku hivi ke amalolo ka vaineu kani kani aula Hoi pu olo huakani haina ka puana no ele Hoi pu olo huakani haina ka puana no ele
Wow, that's so awesome. You know, I love seeing our younger generation take up the mantle of musicians, and they're able to use their voices to spread our message, spread our words, and keep our culture alive. So with that said, Kui Kawa, they're up for Nahoku Hano Hano, but also they're making their way in Maui's musical scene. And somebody that we probably haven't seen much of was from the Palawai Mele, Max Angel Becerra. So there's a leo from our community, beautiful leo, that's using his platform now to support our causes. We have people like Kamaka Kehau Fernandez, we have Kumuhula Pono Murray, we have Nawe Eha. These are all Maui-based musicians, e Hulia mahi nei, I ke kako ono o ke ia pahana, that are coming together to support this project. Now, Ha'aheo Ohono Kauai, I kind of made it into something, an anthem like that Uncle Ed and his descendants would be proud of. Of course, Uncle Ed's words have been memorialized, and if you get the liner notes, you'll be able to tell a little bit more about why the words I chose are in this actual mele. But Kui Kova, they lended their youthful energy to support our cause. Lance, any mana'o on that mele?
Well, I think it was great that Kui Kava was the band or the artists, because Uncle Ed was an educator, and everything that he did with Maui Cultural Lands, and actually everything that he did, always had that sort of educational component to it. And I think it's just great that the young men of Kui Kava, who are just coming out of their student years, are the ones that are celebrating him, because I think that definitely has another layer of honor to the great work of Uncle Ed.
Polole. You know, when we were putting together the CD, I was asked who I want to sing the compositions that I was able to compose, and I had to include Kui Kawa because they're stepping up, and I wanted to feature them. So I'm so grateful for them. And speaking of student, Koa Matos was my student at Kamehameha Schools, and despite that, he still said yes, and he's still helping us out. Anyhow, the next mele was sung by another pretty much hula-based group, Nawai Eha. Now, the two Wan brothers, their mother, Hi'ile, she's a kumuhula, Pukalani Hula Hale. And then you have the Kawa'a brothers, whose mother is also kumuhula, Luana Kawa'a, and they dance for Iliahi Paredes, who was the composer of that mele. So, how much is known, Lance, about the story of Ere'io, and is there any recent scholarship on that mo'olelo?
Well, it's a well-known story. I think basically everybody knows it. Recently, Brian Richardson wrote about the Lahaina bypass, and actually wrote the whole story or analyzed the whole history and what's going on with the Lahaina bypass in terms of LAEO, and about the ideas, the changing ideas that we have about what is traffic, what is transportation, what is fast, what is slow. And it's a great read, and I definitely encourage, it was in the Social Change in West Maui book, so I definitely recommend that folks take a look at it.
Maikai, you know, in being able to look at these mo'olelo as databases, you also get a sense that we usually think that moku, the land divisions, are kind of separated, but they're pulling resources all the way from the Ko'olau district, and so it's basically showing that the sense of ku'aku'ai or commerce is not new to the islands. It was probably a different form. And I will also say that in that mo'olelo of Ere'io, I'm working on a project for West Maui place names. You might have heard of it. That mo'olelo is so rich with place names, and in trying to kalai, or to pull the names apart, you get such descriptive information about that specific site that when we overlay or superimpose colonizer names on places like these, we lose the connection to that history, and it no longer becomes first and foremost in our thoughts when we say the name of McGregor Point or Sprecklesville, places like that. So yeah, that story is such a wonderful resource for us all. And we have our second to last mele. I composed it. This was a very emotional song for me because one of my kupuna, Auntie Diane Amadeo, she shared with me a lot of information and her own family's mo'olelo about this particular area in Lahaina. And the name of the mele is Waihiwa Hiwa o Mokuhinia. Again, mele.com, liner notes, Wai. This is going to be belong in your library. Waihiwa Hiwa o Mokuhinia affectionately pays homage to the work of Friends of Moku'ula. Now, in doing so, it not only calls upon the ali'i and aina of the area, but as I write, it also envisions unison in thought, action, and the aloha needed to restore Moku'ula. E ho'i kanani I Moku'ula. Let the glory return to Moku'ula. We'd like to send this off. Waihiwa Hiwa o Mokuhinia.
Hei ka puho ka lua o kiha Ia wai anane o lani ali Wai wa o moku hinia Wai wa o moku hinia Honia kini ka He hanui ano ke kalani Lili o ke kai o hauolai Ano no I ke huehu o Ano no I ke huehu o
Goodness, like I said, I really don't like to hear myself or watch myself because it's not how I view myself or hear myself. But I really do love that particular mele. My own connection to that area is strong. The mo'olelo shared to me, I always keep close to my heart. I wanted it to sound kind of like I was crying. The subject of this program is Hulia Mahi, coming together. And we know that Aia noa Hulia Mahi kākou, he hiki no. Once we come together, there's so many things that we can do. But the opposite is true if we don't come together in unity. And so Moku'ula right now still remains unrestored through many reasons, but some of it has to do with internal huki within the community that we now are seeing is really unnecessary, and it's kind of what's holding us back. So that kind of wailing sound that I give is for that, but it also is to memorialize our aloha for Friends of Moku'ula directors, Kone Akana and Auntie Shirley, both of whom have passed away. And this mele ultimately is pretty much for them. Do you have any mana'o that you'd like to share about the mele?
Well, just that, I knew Kumu Okoni, and I actually was neighbors with Auntie Shirley's family for a couple of years. And and I find this mele to be very soothing in some ways, both because of both of their sudden passings, but also because of all of the difficulties that have attended to restoring Moku'ula. So I thought it's a very soothing mele for all of those sort of heartaches.
Yeah, thank you so much. Mission accomplished. Hua hua I ka malu'ulu o lele is the last line of that song, and it says maybe, hopefully that the waters can bubble forth again amidst ka malu'ulu o lele, but the other meaning of that, hua hua I, also means to excavate, and ka malu'ulu o lele Park is what's covering Mokuhinia and Moku'ula, so it also means excavate that place and bring back the sanctity, the glory of Moku'ula. Well, we'd like to thank you all for joining us. We're not quite done yet, but we'd like to remind you this wonderful resource, this puke, Mele Old and New, is available at Kamehameha Publishing. And the brand new CD, along with its hiapo, is available at mele.com. You won't be disappointed if you're into mele, if you're into history, if you're into continuity of culture. These two projects, the first CD and the second CD, won't disappoint you. Our next Hulia Mahi series is going to come out on August 28th of 2020. So August 28th, we hope to see you there. On the CD that accompanies that, you will see Kanania o Palawai being presented on that particular project. Lance, it's been so wonderful having you here.
Thank you.
We'd like to say thank you once again to Kanaio Kana and Kahuli Leo Le'a, all of our community partners, everybody who's been cross-posting for us. Thank you for joining us here. I'd also like to thank my ukulele sponsor, Kanile'a Ukulele, for this beautiful Kaimana series. And we're going to close with a mele that can be found in this book, and it's actually the namesake of this project, Leina Honua Pi'ilani, written by Mima Apo. The pride that people have when we sing the mele Hawaii Aloha, that pride, no matter where we are. I travel to Japan or to the continental US, and when we get together as Poe Hawaii and sing this mele, Walana, we ascend, we feel so proud, and we feel so enveloped in aloha. And so if you can imagine that feeling, not particular to Kapai Aino Hawaii Nei, but actually particular to a place, that's what this song is. It has the familiar tune of Hawaii Aloha with words specific to the area, Le Nahonua Pi'ilani, or Nahonua Pi'ilani, West Maui. We'd like to close with this mele. If you'd like to sing along, please do. Maui, West Maui especially, this is your mele. This is a song of pride. This is a song of aloha aina. This is a song of us. Leina honua pi'ilani. E kalai o hauola I ka ehu kei. E la'i nei e kilohi nei I ka makani. Me ke kai hone o ke awa I ki ka ahe one. Uala I oe me na hono a pi'ilani. Leina hono a pi'ilani I ka hano hano. I ka hano hano. I ka hano hano. A ka malu'ulu o lele ha'ahe o nei. I ka loko mai ka I o ke akua. E ka lehua o lihau I ka wekiu. E ka maile o halona e hano hano, I ka hano hano, a ka malu ulu o lele ha'aheo nei. I ka loko mai ka I o ke akua. I ka loko mai ka I o ke akua. Once again, my name is Cody Pueopata. This is Lance Collins. We thank you so much for joining us. Mele Hulia mahi, leina honua pi'ilani, a hui ho kākou on August 28th.